Okay, so you're ready to dive into the world of, like, seriously detailed models and miniatures?
We're talking about resin casting.
Resin casting,
It's a
exactly.
game changer, but like anything worth doing, there's a knack to it, right?
Absolutely. You can't just, like, slap some resin in a mold and call it a day.
This is where our trusty guide working with resin cast parts comes in.
It's like the treasure map to resin casting glory.
We're going to break it down for you step by step.
From inspecting those freshly cast pieces to dealing with, the dreaded warping.
Warping. Please, we laugh in the face of warping. You'll be a pro in no time.
So let's get this resin party started. First things first, you get your hands on some sweet resin parts. What's the very first thing you do?
You resist the urge to immediately start gluing.
Right. The temptation is real.
Take a breath, channel your inner detective, and inspect those parts like your next project depends on it.
Because it kind of does.
Look for any imperfections. Bubbles, misaligned edges, anything that just seems off.
Because let's be real, resin casting can be a bit finicky, right?
It's true, sometimes you get those tiny air bubbles trapped during the curing process, or maybe the mold lines aren't as crisp as you'd like.
And that's where our good friend Model Putty comes in.
Putty is your secret weapon for a flawless finish.
I was reading through the guide, and it mentions this red glazing and spot putty. Sounds pretty hardcore, right?
It's the good stuff. You know what's even better? You can usually find it at your local auto parts store.
No way. Really?
Yeah, they usually have a decent selection of modeling putties.
Who knew? My mind is blown.
Now, here's a pro tip when it comes to putty. Thin layers are your friend. Apply it in thin, even coats, and you'll avoid any cracking and get that super smooth finish.
Like a tiny little sculptor, meticulously crafting the perfect surface.
Exactly. Now, once the putty's dry, it's time to tackle those pesky mold lines.
You mean those thin lines you sometimes see where the mold pieces fit together?
Exactly. Or, as our guide so eloquently calls it, mold flash.
Mold flash. It sounds kind of cool when you put it like that.
So grab your trusty hobby knife and carefully scrape away any excess resin.
Precision is key here, right? We don't want to chop off any important bits.
Exactly. Go slow, take your time, and you'll be golden. And after you've banished those mold lines, it's time for a bit of spa treatment.
Spa treatment. Are we pampering our resin parts now?
Think of it more as a gentle smoothing. Grab some fine grit sandpaper. The guide recommends around 400 to 600 grit, and lightly sand those parts until you've got a nice, even surface.
It's basically prepping the canvas for the masterpiece, which is the painting, right?
Exactly. A smooth surface means the paint will adhere beautifully, giving you vibrant, long-lasting color.
Okay, so we've inspected our parts, banished imperfections with our putty powers, and smoothed everything out with our sanding skills. What's next?
Now it's time to unleash the glue. But not just any glue, mind you. We're talking about the king of adhesives, cyanoacrylate glue.
Cyano what now? That sounds serious.
You might know it better as CA glue. It's like super glue's cooler, more professional older brother.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about the CA glue.
Well, it comes in different thicknesses, or viscosities, as they're technically called.
Viscosity. So like how thick or thin the glue is.
Exactly. And just like you choose a specific type of paintbrush for a specific effect, different viscosities of CA glue are ideal for different applications.
Okay, I'm following. So walk me through these different viscosities. What's the deal?
Well, you've got your thin CA glue, which is almost like water, great for super quick bonds and delicate work.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then you've got your medium CA glue, kind of like a honey consistency. This is what our guide recommends for resin casting. It's that sweet spot, thick enough to fill small gaps and create a strong bond, but not so thick that it makes a mess.
Gap filling. Gotta love that.
Absolutely. And if you're feeling really adventurous, there's also thick CA glue like syrup, but honestly, unless you're gluing large surfaces, it can be a bit overkill.
Yeah, I can see that ending badly.
Now, here's where things get really fun. CA glue has a partner in crime, accelerator.
Accelerator, like the thing that makes wraith cars go faster.
Not quite, but it does speed things up. A quick spritz of accelerator on your boot parts and boom, instant bond.
It's like magic.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now, with your parts all glued up and ready to go, we get to the part we've all been waiting for, painting.
This is where those resin creations really come to life.
The guide recommends starting with a base coat of gray automotive primer.
Gray automotive primer.
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of a good primer. It creates a uniform surface for your paint to cling to, making sure those colors stay vibrant and don't chip off easily.
And I imagine you could find that at the auto parts store too.
Bingo! One-stop shop for all your resin casting needs.
Who knew? You're like a walking, talking fountain of resin wisdom.
Now, once the primer's dry, it's time to unleash your inner artist. Acrylic paints, enamel paints, washes, dry brushing, the sky's the limit.
This is where those resin creations really take on a life of their own. But before we get too carried away with our artistic visions, there's one more thing we need to address. What about warping? It's like the boogeyman of the resin casting world.
Warping. It can be a bit of a nuisance, especially if your parts get jostled around in shipping.
So what's the solution?
You're not going to believe this
Wait.
boiling water.
You're messing with me, right? Boiling water,
Yeah.
as in the stuff that makes pasta.
The very same. I know it sounds crazy, but a quick dip in boiling water can work wonders on warped resin parts. The heat softens the resin just enough to allow you to gently bend it back into shape.
Okay, I'm officially mind blown. It's like a mini sauna for your models.
Basically. Just make sure to be super careful and use tongs or gloves to avoid any burns.
Safety first.
Always. So there you have it, everything you need to know to conquer the world of resin casting.
From inspecting those tiny details to taming warped parts with the power of boiling water, who knew?
It's all about having the right knowledge and tools.
And a healthy dose of patience, right?
Absolutely. But most importantly, remember to have fun with it. Experiment, try new techniques, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn and grow.
Well said. Now that you've been armed with this resin casting knowledge bomb, what incredible creations are you going to bring to life?
The possibilities are endless.
I love it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of resin casting.
Anytime.
And be sure to check out the show notes for a link to the full Working with Resin Cast Parts Guide. It's packed with even more tips and tricks.
It's a goldmine of information.
Until next time, happy casting.